David and Louise Turpin. They chained 13 children to their beds and called it a school. One daughter climbed out a window to set them free. David and Louise Turpin had 13 children. To the world, they were a devout, oversized family. Homeschooled, well-behaved, invisible. David was an engineer, while Louise stayed home. Behind the locked doors of their house in Paris, California, they were running something closer to a prison. The children ate once a day. They bathed just once a year. They were beaten, strangled, and chained to their beds for weeks at a time, freed only to use the bathroom. The parents ate at restaurants. They brought the leftovers home and let the children watch. Sometimes they left pies on the counter, then forbade anyone to touch them. When one girl was caught taking food, her mother had a punishment ready. She put the child's pet cat outside and made her watch as a pack of dogs tore it apart. The starvation showed. The oldest daughter was 29 and weighed 82 pounds. A 12-year-old had the arm of an infant. The children were so small that when help finally came, police thought every one of them was a minor, and they hid it all in plain sight. David registered the house as a private school and named himself the principal. The family slept by day and lived by night, where no neighbor could see. For 2 years, the children planned their escape. On January 14, 2018, 2 of the girls slipped out a window. The 13-year-old lost her nerve and turned back. But 17-year-old Jordan kept going, clutching a deactivated phone, and dialed 911. "My 2 little sisters right now are chained up," she told the dispatcher. When deputies opened the door, the smell hit them first. Inside, they found 12 more children, some shackled to their beds, caked in filth. Louise later wrote her children a note. "Sorry I chained you up," it said. "It won't happen again." Most prisons are built by strangers, but this one was built by a mother and a father for 13 people they had brought into the world. Diane Downs. A man with bushy hair shot her 3 children on a dark road, but there was no man. There was only their mother. Diane Downs had 3 children. Christy was 8, Cheryl was 7, and Danny was 3. She was a postal worker in Oregon and was in love with a married man named Robert Knickerbocker. He had told her something simple. He did not want children. To Diane, that left only one problem to solve. On the night of May 19, 1983, she drove her children down a deserted country road. She told police she had stopped to sightsee, in the dark, with 3 sleeping kids in the back seat. Then, she said, a stranger flagged her down, demanded the car, and opened fire. So she raced to the hospital. Cheryl was already dead. Danny was paralyzed from the waist down, while Christy had suffered a stroke. Diane had a single wound, a bullet through her own left arm. The story fell apart almost at once. There was no blood on the driver's side, and no gunpowder on her door. Witnesses had seen her car crawling toward the hospital at 5 miles an hour, not the desperate sprint she described. She owned a .22 pistol she never mentioned, and the matching cartridges were sitting in her house. While her children fought for their lives, Diane gave interviews. She smiled. She even laughed. Then her own daughter spoke. Christy, 8 years old, recovering from the stroke that had stolen her speech, took the stand and told the courtroom the truth. There had been no stranger. Her mother had shot all 3 of them, then turned the gun on her own arm. Diane was pregnant during the trial, a child she conceived, prosecutors believed, to soften the jury. But it didn't work. On June 17, 1984, she was convicted of murdering her daughter. The 2 survivors were adopted by the prosecutor who put her away. 40 years later, she has never confessed. "I did not shoot my children," she still tells the parole board. She had wanted a man who didn't want children, so she did the math and decided her children were the smaller loss. Susan Smith. For 9 days, she wept on national television, begging a kidnapper to return her sons, but she had drowned them herself. Susan Smith was 23. She had 2 little boys, Michael, 3 years old, and Alexander, 14 months. She was also in love with a wealthy man named Tom Findley. He had just ended things with a letter. He was not ready, he wrote, for a relationship with someone else's children. On the night of October 25, 1994, Susan strapped her sons into their car seats. She let the car roll down a boat ramp into John D. Long Lake and walked away. Then she went to the police with a story. A black man, she said, had jumped into her car at a red light, pointed a gun, and driven off with her babies inside. She gave a description. She even gave interviews. For 9 days, she sobbed in front of the cameras and begged a stranger to bring her children home. The whole country believed her. Strangers tied yellow ribbons. They hung flyers. They prayed for 2 boys who were already at the bottom of a lake. But her story had one flaw. She said she had stopped at a red light on an empty road. But that light only turned red when another car was waiting. There was no other car, and there was no carjacker. On November 3rd, she confessed. Divers found the Mazda submerged 120 feet from shore. Michael and Alexander were still in their seats. So was her wedding dress and her photo album. She had packed her old life into the car and sent it to the bottom. Investigators determined the car floated for 6 minutes before it sank. 6 minutes! Her sons were awake for some of it. A jury took less than 3 hours to convict her. This wasn't a tragic mistake, their father told the court years later. She purposely meant to end their lives. In 2024, after 30 years, Susan asked to go free. But the board said no. She had asked an entire nation to grieve with her, to search for a man who never existed. The only monster on that road was her. Dee Dee Blanchard. For years she told the world her daughter was dying, but the healthy girl in the wheelchair would one day plot her murder. Claudine Blanchard called herself Dee Dee. She had one daughter, Gypsy Rose, and she told the world the girl was dying. When Gypsy was 3 months old, Dee Dee said she had stopped breathing, and by the time the girl was 8, the list had grown. Leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, seizures, and even brain damage. Gypsy was put in a wheelchair. She was fed through a tube. Her teeth were pulled and her salivary glands removed. But none of it was real. Gypsy could walk. She could eat. She wasn't sick at all. Dee Dee even shaved her daughter's head so she would look like a chemo patient. She gave her medicine to fake the symptoms. She forged the birth certificate so the world would think Gypsy was years younger than she was. Gypsy was not sure of her own age for most of her life. And the lie paid. Strangers built them a house. Charities flew them to Disney World. The entire community wrapped its arms around the brave mother and her dying child. But one doctor saw through it. "I don't see any reason why she doesn't walk," a neurologist told Dee Dee. He suspected Munchausen by proxy, meaning a mother making her child sick for attention. Dee Dee simply found another doctor. Then Gypsy figured out the truth. She was healthy. She was just a prisoner. And the only way out, she decided, was through her mother. She met a man online and asked him to help. On June 14, 2015, he stabbed Dee Dee 17 times while Gypsy hid in the bathroom with her hands over her ears. Gypsy got 10 years, while the boyfriend got life in prison. Experts had never seen it before, an abused child who killed the parent abusing her. Dee Dee built a sick child out of a healthy one because a dying daughter made her a hero. But in the end, the daughter she invented killed her. Mary Beth Tinning. She buried 9 of her own children over 14 years. Each tiny funeral brought her sympathy, so she kept having more. Mary Beth Tinning lived in Schenectady, New York. Between 1972 and 1985, she gave birth to 8 children and adopted 1 more, and every single one of them died. They went one at a time. A daughter, 8 days old. A son, 2 years old, gone hours after the hospital sent him home. Another at 3 weeks. Another at 5 months. None of them lived past the age of 4. Doctors reached for explanations. Sudden infant death syndrome, heart failure, a rare genetic curse running quietly through the family. But there was no curse. There was just a pillow. Each time a child died, the town gathered around Mary Beth. Neighbors brought food. Friends wept with her at the graveside. She was the unluckiest mother anyone knew, and the sympathy poured in. Then, she would get pregnant again. In every death, she was the only one in the room. For years, no one stopped her. The doctors were suspicious. Nurses whispered. But every death carried a label that wasn't murder, and so the file always closed. The genetic theory finally collapsed in 1981 when her adopted son Michael died exactly as the others had. He carried none of her blood. There was no disease. There was only her. In 1985, 4-month-old Tammy Lynn became the 9th. A pathologist looked closely and found the truth. She had been smothered. A forensic expert called it what it was, a serial killing of babies. At every funeral, Mary Beth had played the grieving mother, and the town had believed her. Under questioning, she confessed to killing 3 of her children. "I'm not a good mother," she told police, because of the other children. She was convicted of 1 murder because the other 8 were never proven. In 2018, after 31 years, Mary Beth walked free. Her husband, who had stood by her the entire time, was waiting. 9 children were born to be loved. Instead, they were born to be mourned, because their mother loved the mourning more than she ever loved them.